Greetings. It is Thursday, July the 2nd, in the rather eventful year of 2026. I'm Thomas Caldwell of the Aurelian Column, and this is the Midweek Report. Well, the day is finally here. Happy birthday, America. 250 years of a rather interesting history. July the 2nd? Yes, July the 2nd. This is the day the Continental Congress in Philadelphia back in 1776 actually voted and passed the legislation, such as it was, to become an independent collection of states. This is the day. They spent the next day putting all the media together. They worried about that back then too, stuff going to the printer. And on July the 4th, they announced it. John Adams, one of the founding fathers, the second president of the United States, said July the 2nd is going to be a big day of celebration in the future. He predicted that. He got it off by a couple of days. I've always thought that we should have a 3-day holiday, July 2nd, July 3rd, and July 4th. July 2nd being Declaration Day. July the 3rd being Alliance Day, where we celebrate all the alliances that made our independence and our future survival possible. The French, they need a little bit of celebration sometime. And then the 4th, we would have Independence Day. That would give us a whole block of holidays. One could wish. But this year, it's a bit different. Now, the United States is the furthest thing today than it was 250 years ago from what was envisioned by the men who got together and did the impossible, which was to separate from a superpower. Really, that's what they did. They separated from the global superpower. That would be like a handful of states out west separating from the United States today. Possible? Never know. But highly unlikely. And why did that happen? Well, you can get into all sorts of debate and discussion, but at the end of the day is just people had had enough of what they thought was nonsense and tyrannical behavior. Now, you can debate whether or not it was out so bad or not. It doesn't really matter. But the thing that you want to consider is that they thought they'd had enough. Come forward 250 years, and Americans and also Europeans have come to the conclusion, in most places, not many, most, that we've had enough. There's a movie out, which I discussed on Monday. It's called Citizen Vigilante. Now, I've seen the movie from a purely cinematic perspective. It's not fantastic. It has its moments, but realistically, that's not the point. The point of the movie is that it's now allowing the discussion of something key to our survival, and that is whether or not the United States, Western civilization as a whole, allow the invasion of millions upon millions upon millions of people who are here, who are not able to partake in our way of thinking. There's nothing wrong with different people coming into the United States. I mean, let's face it, Italians came in, people hated them, but how many people dislike pizza these days? Or the Chinese who came in mass and helped build the railroads. A lot of them stayed behind, and actually, a lot of them started up pretty fascinating communities. Many went on to be top scientists. A long time ago. Fascinating stories about all the different peoples that have come to the United States. But the one thing that they all did was they acclimated. I saw a video not too long ago about a man who came from the Philippines, and he joked about it. He said, why can't people just acclimate? Because when my people came here, the first thing we stopped doing is eating dogs. Didn't go over too well. So they embraced hamburgers like everyone else. Right now, we are under threat. Not even under threat. We're being attacked. Women are being brutalized. Children are being trafficked. It's horror. We are way past the point that the founding fathers 250 years ago would have considered sane to sit around and just talk. This is a time for action. Now, going back to this movie, I'm sure it's raised an awful lot of bloodlust with people who like the idea of going out and shooting all bad guys. They had that back in the 1970s with the two movies, Clint Eastwood's Dirty Harry and the subsequent movies that came after that, and also Death Wish with Charles Bronson. New York City was a real sewer back in the 70s, believe me. And everybody wanted to see the criminals just shot and done away with, which in many cases is probably a good idea, though it should be done legally. It did eventually result in change. And if you remember, I told people that this movie could have the same cultural impact as the novel Uncle Tom's Cabin did back in the 1800s into bringing along the Civil War. The Civil War meaning change, pretty much. Frankly, I think Uncle Tom's Cabin was a much better, much better bit of media than what the movie's about. In fact, the movie now has merchandising. Okay, you can buy T-shirts and coffee mugs and ball caps. And I wonder what's going to be next. Action figures of the vigilante with his little gun, and yeah. Maybe they should have had action figures in Uncle Tom's Cabin back in the day. You know, collect the whole set. Such strange times and strange things we have to deal with. But here's the thing. The movie serves an important purpose, as now we are safe to talk about what needs to be done. Mark my words, we have far more tyranny to deal with in the United States and Europe than they had to deal with 250 years ago. What they had to deal with pales in comparison to what we now have to deal with. King George did not have electronic surveillance. He didn't have the internet. He didn't have an NSA. He didn't have all sorts of Patriot Act and things like that going for him. And he even wasn't such a bad guy if you look at the real history of it all. No, the thing that we need to talk about is what to do. Going around and just randomly killing people is not going to work. For one thing, it's wrong, and two, I'm a little bit early right now, sorry. The tyrants amongst us are ready for that. No. We have to do something more important. We have to do something much more deadly. We have to do something much more ruthless, and that is to get together and meet face to face and discuss. To talk. I don't have all the answers. Nobody does. And if you ever notice, the person that claims to have all the answers is usually responsible for just about all the problems. No. Over the next few days, Americans are going to be celebrating the 4th of July, Independence Day. And there are many Europeans who have shown up on our shores for this World Cup soccer thing. Sorry, I don't follow soccer and don't particularly find it interesting, but they're here and they seem to find us fascinating, and not what they've been taught. They think we're friendly, and we are for the most part. Americans tend to be very nice people, most of us. It's only the small criminal element that you see in the headlines. Be careful of the food, though. It's not as healthy as you think. But they're going to be here congregating with us. We're going to be here. So invite a few Europeans to your July 4th celebration if you have the opportunity, and talk about the threat to our civilization. the threat to our people, our children, our daughters, our way of life. And what can be done about it? Just go from there. I guarantee you the tyrants who are at the head of our affairs are not going to like that. And that's good. They can't do anything about it because they still have to operate within a certain set of rules. But we can talk about anything we want. Within reason, of course. What do I mean by within reason? Now, you wonder why I paused there. Well, if you get together with someone and one of the people in your group suddenly says, we should go off and do XYZ, which is an act of terrorism by any definition. If none of you say anything, you can actually be complicit in what's called conspiracy. At least that's the general understanding. Don't get caught up in the emotion of primitive bloodlust. That's not how you win. Back in 1776, they were not in Philadelphia screaming how they wanted to kill, 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 and destroy, destroy, destroy. No, they were very, very measured and very, very smart in how they proceeded with things. And they eventually won. Rash action does not victory lead to. Thoughtful, considerate, civilized. That's what you want to be. If we don't do something, we won't make it to the year 300 in terms of anniversary, let alone much further on. The U.S. is in danger right now. Europe is being murdered before our eyes. So it's time that we do something about it. But do. That's the optimal word. So this weekend, I wish everybody a very happy 4th of July, or today, which is the real Independence Day. Doesn't matter. Have a lot of fun. Make some European friends. Bring them into the conversation. You can use this movie as a pretext, but the movie is a fantasy, not real. Real is what is needed, now more than ever. That's it for today. If you appreciate my work, please like, subscribe, and share. Share with your friends and share with your enemies. And if they're real enemies, be careful. I can be reached at feedback@aureliancolumn.com. That's feedback@aureliancolumn.com. I'm up on X. My handle there is MICCAMPEN. That's MICCAMPEN. This podcast originates at Substack. My handle there is aureliancolumn.substack.com. Until we meet again, be good, be safe, be vigilant. And remember, Clown World, the deep state, and AI, artificial intelligence, must be destroyed. And to my fellow Virginians and the rest of America, from sea to shining sea, sic semper tyrannis. Good day.